103a, halfway down the page. Kahana Yohiv Zuza Akisna. Good morning, good morning. Kahana paid money for Kisna. Kisna is flax. See, Rav Kahana was trying to do a business deal. He had an investment. Rav Kahana, he invested in flax. He had someone buy flax on his behalf. What happens? The L'saif eventually Ayakar Kisna. The flax increased in value, and Zavne Marvose de Kisna, the holder of the flax, sold it. So again, if Kahana gave money, let's say to somebody whose name was Velvel, and Velvel.
He spoke at our shul once.
What was that?
Velvel Pasternak spoke at our shul once. It was a musicon, Hebrew Jewish music and histories of Jewish music.
So he gave it to Velvel, and Velvel invested the money in flax. And then when the flax increased in value, Velvel sold the flax. Also, the Rav. So Rav Kahana came to Rav with a question. Amalei Ma'av, what should I do? Ezel Ishkel Zuzai, should I go collect money? So so Rav says to him, Iki Kazavni, Amri, Hai Kisna de Kahanahu, Zilshkol, Eloy Loy Tishkol. So Rav says to him as follows: if when he sold the flax, he said, this is Rav's flax, Rav Kahana's flax, then you can go and collect the money. If not, you can't collect the money. Even though he was the investor, if Kahana was the investor here. Obviously, the question is why. In other words, if Kahana invests money with somebody, and he makes money on the deal, right? The guy buys the flax, it goes up in value, he sells the flax. So the question here is, Rav Kahana says, I'd like the profits plus my investment back. And the other guy says, well, and Rav says to him, it depends. Did the buyer know that he's buying your flax? Now, if you remember what we said yesterday, that's the exact phraseology. So in other words, Rav is making a big deal on the buyer of the flax, knowing that it was Rav Kahana's flax. Meaning, presumably, this is in line with what we said yesterday, that the buyer intends to buy what he believes belongs to the seller, and give the money to who he believes is the seller. So now, if he told him it was Rav Kahana's, so it's as if he interacted directly with Rav Kahana. If it wasn't Rav Kahana's, if the buyer didn't know it was Rav Kahana, so then he interacted with Rav Kahana's with the guy doing the deal with Velvel, not with the investor of Kahana. And he seems to make a big deal about it. Okay. So the Gemara says, come on, who's this like? B'nei Marova. Presumably it's like the B'nei Marova. The B'nei Marova say that anytime somebody makes a transaction, they do the transaction with the counterparty that they are aware of. So if you do business with me, then it's as if you're selling it to me or buying things from me. You may not know that the money that I have is you may be aware that the money that I have is from an investor. You may not. If you knew, then you would be interacting directly. You'd sell directly to the investor or buy directly from the investor. And if you didn't know, you're dealing with me. So this seems to support the opinion of the Bnei Marava, the rabbis of Israel. The Amr Mia de who told the owner of the wheat that he's buying the wheat from the owner of the that he's selling the wheat to the guy who actually owns the money. Meaning according to Bnei Marava, the kinyan is presumed to be directly with the one who you're interacting, unless known otherwise. So the Gemara says, the Gemara says, 1 second. Rav Kahana here didn't give the money, and Rav Kahana bought the actual flax. He told Velvel to buy flax. He didn't just give Velvel money and took back more money. He told him to actually buy it. The Gemara says, "Kisna memelu de yakar." It wasn't like Rav gave him 4 and took back 8. Rav bought flax and sold it at a higher price, and he paid for it. If that's the case, then the Velvel is a thief. If Velvel doesn't want to pay Rav Kahana, Kahana bought wheat. He told Velvel to buy the wheat, and the wheat went in the flax. The flax increased in value, and now Velvel doesn't want to give him back the money. Velvel's a thief, and he should pay the Tanan Kolgas on Shalom Kishas Xela. He should pay the value at the time that he stole, which may be less than the current value. So the Gemara says, no, what actually happened here was Amri Hasam Amonahu V'lemashker of Kahana L'Kisna. Okay, the exact scenario here was nothing to do with Rav Kahana, with the story of the Bnei Marafa, the rabbis of Israel, and it has nothing to do with thievery. What happened was this was an Amonah. Basically, Rav Kahana gave him the money and trusted him to buy the flax. Rav Kahana himself did not acquire the flax with his own hands. Okay. The issue here is an issue of potential ribbis, interest. Rav says one is allowed to buy on trust with the fruits itself, but not with money. So let's explain. So if Rav Kahana bought the flax, okay, if the guy would return the flax to Rav Kahana, that would be permitted. Furthermore, if the guy notifies the buyer that this is Rav Kahana's flax, that's the same as returning the flax to Rav Kahana. However, if he doesn't notify the buyer, wait a me a second, we'll be at the Mishnah of 103a. If he doesn't know the buyer, if he doesn't notify the buyer that this is Rav Kahana's flax, it looks like ribbis. Why? Rav Kahana gives money and takes back more money than he gets. It looks like it's a loan, and Rav is taking back more than he gets. No. I'm on a bit Paris. If Rav was getting back flax itself at a later point in time, that would be acceptable. Or if the buyer was notified that this is Rav Kahana's flax, it's effectively the same thing. But if the buyer wasn't notified, so it looks like it's an investment, it looks like it's a loan with interest. You gave the guy money, 4 coins, and now you're taking back 8 coins, looks like it's interest, it's no good. Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to say, I heard he took a lot of flax for that.
Somebody steals from his friend money and then he swears. Okay, so what happened here? This is a shvuas hakazlana. It could be a number of scenarios. It could be a regular thief that denies that he stole. It could be a shvuas hashemrim, right, where the guy actually was given it to watch and then lied about it and swore about it, and he actually is the thief.
With the Mishnah?
At the Mishnah, yeah. The key point here is as follows. If you lie about stealing under oath, and then it turns out you're actually the thief, then any payment related to Karen, that's the principal, must be returned. And when we say must, what does that mean? The guy, if you live in Babylonia, and the guy travels to Persia, which apparently is quite a distance, you have to go afterwards to, I'm sorry, Mada is media. You have to go afterwards to media and return the item. Okay, and we'll discuss this more, but generally speaking, a regular thief, we would not require this. You know, sort of as soon as you admit you're a robber, then you keep the item until he's easy to get to, and then you return it.
Especially, I mean, if you're a thief, you're probably poor to begin with. You may not even be able to afford the cost of going to wherever this person may be.
So we'll get to more details about the affordability of the trip, but generally speaking, the key problem here is that you swore about it. It's much worse than if you just stole and admit it. Stole and admitted that it's pretty bad, but
Stolen. It's almost the same though, if you admit it as opposed to.
So if you swore about it, it's much worse.
It's worse, okay, because you're involving Hashem.
You're involving Hashem. You're also compromising your words. Okay, so Furthermore, you don't give it to his son. You can't return the stolen item to the guy's son if the guy's still alive. Nor to his messenger. We'll discuss this in detail. But you could return the item to the messenger of the court. Okay, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But basically, let's say the trip to media is more expensive than the stolen item. Right? You stole a couple of the guy's pens. And made a big fuss about it, and decided to lie about it. And the trip to media is a lot more expensive than a few pens. Then you can return it to the messenger of the court. Okay, the imace. What happens if the thief dies? Yachsel yarshav. Then you can give it to his inheritors because they actually own it. Okay. Now another point here is when you lie under oath, the penalty, and this is true of all types of oaths. It's a very similar penalty to using hektish inappropriately, which is keren, chaimish, v'asham. Keren is the principal, chaimish is an additional fifth, and then asham is a sacrifice. Same penalty here. It's a penalty for lying about any oath, basically. Okay, so now what happened was, so the guy has to pay. He has to pay back to the original owner, 120%. Keren, principal, and chaimish, a fifth. So nosan as a keren, but nosan as a chaimish. He gave him back the principal, but didn't give him back the fifth. Or mochaloi ala keren, v'le mochaloi ala chaimish. The guy was willing to forgive the principal, but he wanted the fifth back. It's an interesting story.
He took the fifth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Very good, very good. V'le mochaloi ala chaimish. Yeah, 1 second. Mochaloi ala keren, v'le mochaloi ala chaimish. You forgave the principal, but didn't forgive the fifth. Machalai al zev al zev. Chutzni pachashav pruta. 1 second. Chutzni pachashav pruta b'keren and it's sarach leil chachrov. He forgave the entire stolen item plus the fifth, except for less than a shav pruta, less like 5 cents worth of principal. Right? It was just a matter of principle. He just wanted to show the guy he has to pay back a nickel. Right? So except for shav pruta principle. The law is ain't it sarach leil chachrov. So let's explain this. The key idea for when you have to chase the guy down to Madai is when you owe him principal. Not when you owe him the fifth, and not when the amount of principal owed is a nickel. Presuming that a shav pruta is whatever, a dime or a quarter. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's a penny. It could be. It's a separate discussion.
Right.
Okay. The same thing in the reverse now. Nosan le'as chaimish. You gave him the fifth, but lo nosan le'as keren, but you didn't give him back the principal. Or mochalai ala chaimish. You forgave the fifth, but lo mochalai ala keren, but you did not forgive the principal. Or mochalai al zev al zeh. You forgave the entire stolen item plus the fifth. Chutz mishav pruta keren, except for a nickel worth, except for a quarter's worth or dollar worth of principal. So some amount of principal there. In that case, tzarich leil chachrov, you have to go chase him to media and return the stolen item. Nosan le'as keren, you returned the principal. The nishbalai ala chaimish. Okay, so that was the guy stole $100 and then lied about it under oath. Now he owes the guy $120. So he returned $100 and then he lied about owing $20. You imagine. And not only did he lie about it, the nishbalai ala chaimish. He made an oath about the $20. So what happens? You have to pay 20% of 20. So now you owe the guy $124. Okay, so he gave back $20. Now he still owes the guy $4. And what did he do? Yes. If he lies again about the $4, then how much does he owe? $4.80. Right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens if he lies about the 80 cents? Right? So now he owes, 14 cents, right? 16 cents. 16 cents, let's say, for argument's sake, that 16 cents is less than a shav pruta. At that point, it's over. It's done. So you're not going to make an oath on the 16 cents. Okay. Actually, the same thing is true of the laws of Pekadon. Pekadon is same story basically, except instead of stealing the item, you got it with permission, but then you lied about it. right? So I gave Velvel I gave him my car to watch, and he stole my car, and then said somebody else stole it, and then he made an oath, so he pays the car plus a fifth, and then has to bring a sacrifice. Then he gave me back my car, but he lied about the fifth. Same story again.
Right.
And again, and not only that, if let's say I've been on vacation to Los Angeles, so he has to drive my car down to Los Angeles to return the car. And in any scenario where he lies about having an item in his domain, you pay principal 20% and Osham a sacrifice. Okay, nishbala in, lo nishbala loy. The key component of our mission is what? The oath. Mani, whose opinion is this? Loy Reb Tarfon v'loy Reb Akiva. It's not the opinion of Reb Tarfon or Reb Akiva. What are we talking about? The Tanya we learned. Gozal echan mechamisha. Sad story, right? There was a guy who went to the locker room, and he snipped off a locker. He opened a random locker and he stole stuff. And now what happens? Everyone realizes that there's a lock missing, and they all claim it was their locker.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't know which of the five people. He knows he stole from one person. He doesn't know which of the five people claiming that they were the victim did he actually steal from. So what does he do? How does he return it? The Kollel Omer, everyone says, Oisi Gozlik, he stole me. He stole from me. Different Tarfon. Tarfon says very simple, you play steal the salami. Right? You line them up, say go, and whoever takes it, that's how you return the item. Whoever gets it first is going to get it. Rabbi Kiva says, this is not the way to return it. The Avera will save him from sin. You have to return the stolen item to each person. So let's say he stole from the locker, I don't know, a set of shoes. Give each of them a set of shoes. Presumably they all have the same foot size, or one of them is grossly lying. Mani, Erev Tarfon, he had his mother's shoes that day, or his brother's shoes, whatever. Okay. Mani, Erev Tarfon, Afagav de Shtaba, Amar Miniach Sela Binam. So who are we talking about? Reb Tarfon. If we're talking about Reb Tarfon says Alphagav de Shtava. Even presumably this brisa is talking about both where they made an oath or where they did not make an oath. In both scenarios, what does he say? What's the solution? Alphagav de Shtava. Even though he swears about it, he can sort of leave the stolen item between them and let them fight it out. Which seems to contradict our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says you have to return the guy, literally travel to media to return it. So presumably you'd have to return it to all five people. Here, Rabbi Kiva, if we're going through Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Kiva says even if he didn't steal it, then you return it to each person. So the Gemara says, okay, Rabbi Kiva. Amar Rabbi Kiva at Shisham Zel Kol Echad Be'echad Hechad Ishtava Hu Dekamar. What's this? Folio 6688. 6698, I think. Sorry? 6698. Do you have the Wi-Fi code? I'm sorry, 1 second. Rabbi Kiva, we're going with the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. When Rabbi Kiva says that you have to return the stolen item to each person, Rabbi Kiva says is talking about a scenario where he swore about it. Rabbi Kiva says the guy returns the stolen item to each of the five people laying claim to it. That's specifically where you made the oath. My time, or what's the reason? you have to return it to the one who it belongs to, because 5 people are claiming it belongs to them. So therefore, you have to give it back to 5 people. Reb Tarfon says the rabbis enacted a plan to prevent the robber from having to repay too much. In this case, they have to repay 5 times what he stole. So therefore, they said he only has to return it to the group of them, and then they can fight it out themselves. Itanya, we learned Rabbi Elazar ber Tzadik Aimer to Konig Dela Hiskinu Shem Haisa Haitza Yisera La Karen Misham Karen Rechaimish Lebezdin Umevi Hashami Miskaperli. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar really is explaining the line in the Mishnah. The Mishnah gives one line where it says you return it to the messenger of Bezdin, the emissary of the courts. Right? Why exactly is the guy returning to the emissary of the court and not going to Madai and returning it to the guy in Madai? The answer is this Rabbi Elazar ber Tzadik. What is that? What happened? Rabbi Elazar ber Tzadik says if it's too expensive to take the trip, it's more expensive than the stolen item, then the court can act as a representative, and you can return it to the messenger of the court. We see here the court cares about a robber who lied about his robbery to make it more convenient for him to return under certain circumstances. Says Reb Tarfon, similarly, if there are 5 people who claim to be the victims, the court makes it easier. They say you just return it to the group of all 5 of them, and then you let them fight it out.
I got confused at the beginning. Why 5? I thought he stole it from one locker.
See, exactly, but 5 people claim it's their locker. One of those 5. 4 of those 5 victims are not victims.
Okay, they're claiming that is their locker, even though they got a locker somewhere.
Exactly. They could I'm making it a very uncharitable situation. If I wanted to make it a little more charitable, it could be maybe that I don't know, they had a lawn chair outside. I know the lawn chairs went missing one day, and the guy admits to stealing one of them. Maybe there were other robbers. Maybe they got carried away by the wind or something. Who knows what?
No, that's fine. Okay.
That would be a more charitable version of a similar story. Okay. Okay, so the Gemara says, Reb Kiva says the rabbis were more compassionate when you knew who you stole from. Because at least you're getting the emissary of the court is acting on behalf of the victim, the certain victim. However, in a case where you stole from 5, however, in a scenario where you stole from 5 people and you do not know who you're giving it back to, so then the rabbis did not enact this, did not provide the possibility of an easy return. They said you have to give it back to each of the 5 people. Okay, now we get to a Gemara. Just to be clear about this, there's 2 questions here, and the questions actually contradict each other. They do. The point is not the contradiction, the fact that there's 2 opinions, machlokes, but either opinion contradicts what we just said. Right? So in other words, despite the fact that the 2 questions actually fundamentally disagree with each other, either of them also disagree with the explanation we've just given Rabbi Kiva, which will lead the Gemara to abandon Rabbi Kiva as the author of the Mishnah, and we'll actually go with Reb Tarfon, and we'll have to figure out how to square Reb Tarfon with the Mishnah. Okay. So most of Rav Huna bar Yehudah. So Rav Huna bar Yehudah asked, Amar Rav Shimon ben Elazar. He's quoting Rav Shimon ben Elazar again. Le'nech go Reb Tarfon Rabbi Kiva al shalokach echad mechamisha ve'eni yedea me'ezim hen lokach. Reb Tarfon and Rabbi Kiva are not debating when a guy steals from 1 of 5. Ve'eni yedea me'ezim hen lokach sheminiyat me'mekach b'neim u'mistalak. They're not disagreeing about a scenario of lokach. What does lokach mean? Lokach means he was watching it. So, for example, let's say 5 people had a coat, and he wanted to borrow a coat from somebody. So he borrowed the coat and took the wrong coat, and presumably he did so with permission. And then he lied about it, effectively becoming the thief. At a later point in time, everyone agrees at that point you can return it to the group of 5 and let them fight it out. What's the debate? He stole from 1 of 5, meaning the initial coming into his domain, the initial act of taking was an act of thievery. Okay, Reb Tarfon says you put the stolen item in between them, and you can let them fight it out. Rabbi Akiva, just like Rabbi Tarfon says, it's no different whether it was stolen or whether it came into your domain with the owner's permission. In the case that you were a watchman, you put the item between them, let them fight it out. Rabbi Akiva says no. When you steal it, you have to repay each of them. Okay. However, if you tell me that Rabbi Akiva only made his statement when they swore about it, in other words, according to Rabbi Akiva, generally speaking, you can return it to all five victim claimers, except where they made an oath about it. Now, if you make an oath about something that is false, whether the item was given to you with the owner's permission or without the owner's permission, it doesn't make a difference. You're still a thief at that moment. So why would Rabbi Akiva differentiate between lokach and gazal? You together?
Mm-hmm.
Again?
Yeah.
Second time?
Yes.
Again. So in other words, if we're talking about without an oath, so then it's logical to say if a guy with permission took an item, doesn't know who to return it to. So you return it to all five of them. He didn't do anything wrong. If he stole the item, according to Rabbi Akiva, you have to give all five victim claimers.
Mhm.
Make sense? That
Does
makes
he
sense.
have to divvy it up 5 ways, or does he have to give the whole?
No,
item
the
to
whole
five
thing
people?
the whole thing 5 times.
So he's going to lose out 5 times.
Four
That'll
times.
teach him.
4 times.
5
Absolutely.
times. That'll teach him.
Yeah. Now, so that makes sense. However, if Rabbi Akiva says we're only talking about the scenario where you stole and you lied about it, does it make a difference? Does it make a difference between whether you stole? Does it make a difference whether you stole from? Whether you stole in action and lied about it, or whether you actually got the item with permission, but then stole it by lying about it. Because lying about an item in your domain that you got with permission is stealing.
Mhm.
So why would it make a difference? That's the first question. Okay, next question. Again, I said the second question disagrees with the first question. Mosif Rava. Rava has a question. There was a story about one chassid. He took something from 2 people and he didn't know from which person he took it. He went in front of Reb Tarfon, and Reb Tarfon says, leave the item between them and you can go. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva says you have to pay each of them. Now, and again, in this case, it was an innocent scenario. The chassid, let's say, wanted wood for his fireplace. So he asked somebody for wood. He says, you can go take wood from this place. And he took wood from his direction. But if everyone to yeshiva, I'm not a coffee drinker, as you probably noticed. But everybody likes Taster's Choice. So you go to the coffee room and there's like hundreds of bottles of Taster's Choice, and every one of them has like its own unique markings. So everyone can figure out which one is which. Right. So this one has a rip on the left side through the 3rd letter, and this one has a black dot. So the guy got permission to take one guy's coffee, and he took the other guy's coffee. Right.
By accident?
By accident.
Okay.
By accident.
Yeah.
It could be he even got permission to both of them to borrow coffee.
Mhm.
He just doesn't remember which one he took from.
Mhm.
So Tarfon says here, you do is you put the coffee between them, and let them find it out. And Rabbi Akiva said, no, got to return the coffee to each one of them. 1 second. We just said that Rabbi Tarfon was talking about a thief who lies. And now Rabbi Akiva in the Chassid Echad, this story about the Chassids, we'll give the Chassid a name in a few minutes, a minute maybe. But over here in the scenario of the Chassid, what are we saying? We're saying that no, got to give it to both of them. Legitimately, he took the coffee legitimately with permission, and he still has to return it to both of them. So clearly, Reb Tarfon is not just talking about thievery and lying about it under oath. Clearly, that's not the case. Okay. Do you think the chassid was lying falsely? In other words, do you think this story, the chassid got permission to take the coffee and then he lied about it? So Gemara says, maybe maybe you're right. Maybe he did lie about it under oath. So that's why he had to return it to both of them. But then he became a chassid after the story happened. He lied under oath and then he became a chassid.
He got religion.
Yeah, he found it in prison. Or a common place to find religion, sadly. There's just one problem. Whenever the Gemara says a story about a chassid, who's the chassid? We know his name. Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava, Rabbi Yehudah ben Bavli. It's either Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava or Rabbi Yehudah ben Bavli. And both of them Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava and Rabbi Yehudah bar Eloi, Chasidim de Mikar Hava. These people are righteous from a very young age. It's inconceivable that they would lie under oath. So clearly, our mission is clearly Rabbi Kiva is not just limited to stealing and lying about it under oath. Clearly, Rabbi Kiva is making a general statement where you're not sure who you owe the money to. You have to pay to both of them. Okay. So we go back. El Tarfin, he must be Reb Tarfin. Reb Tarfin, Reb Tarfin agree. Okay, so Reb Tarfin says you drop the item in the middle and you let them fight. Except Reb Tarfin admits that when you make an oath, meaning when the thief lies under oath, then we make him pay to each person. My time. B'yom means the day that he lied about it. That gives you a bigger penalty. You have to make sure you return it to the guy who you stole from, because there are 5 people claiming that you stole from them. You have to pay it to all 5 of them. Yeah.
Mhm.
Even if all 5 go to Medina.
Yeah, presumably. Okay, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Kiva gives a penalty even if he didn't lie about it. Okay, so the Gemara says, in a scenario where he lied, it must be that he lied about it and then admitted that he lied about it. Right? Okay. So even if he didn't make an oath, you should still have to return it to all 5 of them. The Tanya we learned, Reb Tarfin says that where you admit to committing a crime, to stealing, then you do have to pay to both people, even without lying under oath. So what's unique about lying under oath? Anytime you admit to doing a crime, you need to pay to both victims, both people that claim to be victims. Okay, so the Gemara says, so Rava retracts that scenario and gives the third scenario. Masnisan shiny masnisan kiven the other my gazle for odile, even the efshala hadura mimaina lamari have like an amrla yuli biadach. Okay. Rava says the mission is a unique scenario. 1 second. Okay. In our mission, because he knows who he stole from, the Efshel, and he's able to return the money, typically speaking, when somebody steals and he admits to stealing, it's the owner says, okay, when I come around, I'll come pick up the stolen item. You figure if the guy's admitting to stealing an item, you can handle with him having it for another couple of days. If he admitted to it, presumably he'll give it back to you when time comes. So normally, a guy steals something, right? He calls up the original owner, he says, I stole the item, how can I help? How can I return it? So they negotiate some way, the owner comes over and picks up the item, or he arranges something. That's all true where he did not lie about it, but where he lied about it, then he does not atone for his lying until the item is returned. Even if the owner is gracious enough to say, it's fine, I'll come back in 2 days. No. Immediately you have to return it. But if he did not lie about it under oath, then it would be permitted for him to continue to hold the item until the owner comes to get it. So this is a unique rule with regard to returning the item. It's really independent from the question of Reb Tarfin or Rabbi Kiva. It has nothing to do with the number of claimants. The issue is here is, do you have to immediately return it or not? The answer is depends if you lied about it. If you lied about it, you must return it immediately. If not, not. Next Gemara. You shouldn't give it to his son or his messenger. It's a critical word there, the messenger. You shouldn't return it to the messenger. Why not? Itmar. Okay, so here we have a scenario. I borrowed money from Jules. Yeah? Think you'd lend me some money? Maybe. Just a small amount. Okay, so now what happened was, Shliach Shaso B'Edim. So Jules appointed messengers. He appointed in front of witnesses, in front of Steve and Eric. He appointed them as witnesses, and he made Reuven a shliach, an agent, to collect the debt from me. So if Chizda Amar have a shliach. So if Chizda says very simple: if I repay the debt to Reuven, who will carry the debt for you, then I repaid my debt. It's done. Sounds good. Okay. However, Rabba Amar lo have a shliach. Rabba says no. I'm still responsible until the money gets back to you, despite the fact that Reuven was appointed as an agent by two witnesses. Okay, Rav Chizda Amar Hava Shliach. Rav Chizda says he's a messenger. Rav Chizda says, what do you mean? You make a fancy appointment in front of two witnesses. What else do you think he's doing? What else was Jules trying to do when he appointed Reuven as an agent in front of Eric and Steve? Obviously, he was trying to say that Reuven acts as his representative, and when Reuven gets the money, the debt is repaid. And Rabba says, not necessarily. What Jules is trying to communicate is, Inish mehem nehu. You can trust Reuven; he's a reliable guy. If you want to rely on him, well, I rely on him, but you can rely on him too. But the debt is not repaid until Jules gets the money back. If you want to send it with him, send it with him. Okay. Tanan. We learned in the mission. Hashala Saporo, somebody borrows a ox. Okay. And so you have here in Hebrew there's separate words for loaning money or loaning items. In English it's the same. Right? So there is the loaner, the guy who owns the ox, the guy who borrows the ox. Okay, the lender and the borrower. So what happened? The lender sends the ox, biad benoi, through his son, biad avdoi, through his slave, biad shluchai, through his agent, or biad benoi, biad avdoi, biad shluchai, the son, slave, or agent, shel shoel, of the borrower. So lender hands it over. Lender transports the ox either through his own agents or through the borrower's agents to the borrower. Umesa, and it dies on the road. Potter, the borrower is exempt. What type of messenger is it? If it was appointed, if it wasn't done with witnesses, how do we know he's actually a messenger? Who said he was appointed as a messenger? Elo must be the asab Adam, that he did appoint messengers. Uktani the potter. And what does the Mishnah say? The borrower is exempt. Again, what happened here? The borrower appoints an agent with witnesses to go collect the ox from the lender and bring it to the borrower. It dies on the way. Borrower is exempt. Why is he exempt? He appointed witness. According to Rav Chizda, that the agent appointed with witnesses should be his domain, and therefore he should be liable. So the Gemara says, Kash Rav Chizda, look at Amar Rav Chizda, b'schira of l'kita, chanam b'schira of l'kita. We're talking about schira of l'kita. What does schira of l'kita mean? Schira of l'kita is like a secretary. It's more than just a secretary. It's like a executive assistant. It's somebody who literally does all the work. So it's obvious that if he's acting on anyone's behalf, he's acting on behalf of the borrower. So therefore, we don't need witnesses. He wasn't appointed with witnesses. And we don't need witnesses to know that he's obviously representing the borrower. However, it still didn't get to the borrower. And therefore, the borrower is exempt. Okay, so now we learn. Our Mishnah, right? You're returning a stolen object. You can't give it to the guy's sons or his messengers. What's the scenario of the messenger? If you did not appoint the messenger with witnesses, and how do we know he's a messenger? In other words, we have Ganav, right? The Ganav is Velvel. Velvel stole, and Velvel is now returning to Reuven, right? Reuven presumably appointed a messenger. Otherwise, how would Velvel know that this guy's a messenger? Maybe he's lying about it. So Reuven presumably appoints the messenger with witnesses. And yet, Velvel cannot return it to Reuven's messenger. Why not? It must be that the halacha does not follow Rav Chizda. A messenger, even appointed with witnesses, does not represent the one who sent him. So the Gemara says, Rav Chizda would respond, it's not a question either, because we're talking about schira of l'kitoi. We're talking about schira of l'kitoi. Again, the secretary. Reuven, the one whose item was stolen, he sent his secretary to go pick up the item. And the answer is you can't return to the secretary, you have to return directly to Reuven. Okay. let's say you appointed the agent with witnesses. According to Rav Chizda, what would it be? Then it would be the agency would be valid, and you would be able to return to the agent. So why does the Mishnah end off? You can give it to the messenger of the court. Let's differentiate in and of itself. That if you appointed the agent with witnesses, then he would be a valid agent. In other words, according to Rav Chizda, there's two ways to make a valid agent. Number one, the messenger of the court. Number two, where he was appointed with witnesses. Why doesn't the Mishnah tell me that difference as well? That if you appointed him with witnesses, then it would be valid. The Gemara says, Amri loy psikale. It's not as clear. Let's explain. Shliach bezdin, the messenger of the court, loishna also nigzav, loishna also God's man hava shliach. Psikale. The messenger of the court could either have been requested by the one who was stolen, the one whose money was stolen, or by the thief. They can both request the court appoint an agent to hold the items so the guy doesn't need to travel to media. That makes sense. However, shliach shaso be'edim dechiyaso nigzal hu dehava shliach. So gaz and lehava shliach loy psikale. In the case of the messenger of the thief, the one who was stolen from, the original owner, he can appoint a messenger. The thief obviously can't appoint a messenger. So therefore, the Mishnah would not prefer that scenario. The Mishnah would prefer a scenario where the court-appointed messenger could be appointed either by the thief or by the original owner, as opposed to a messenger that was appointed with witnesses, which would have had to be it would have been necessary to appoint them that the original owner appointed the messenger. Okay.